What happens when 87 tanks, dozens of armored carriers, and artillery spotters roll confidently into a valley without realizing every step has been monitored for weeks? You're about to see how Ukraine used intelligence, precision mining, and allied surveillance to turn overwhelming firepower into an ambush with no escape. The attackers thought they were the hunters, but within minutes, they became the prey. How do you stop an entire armored battalion with fewer weapons and less heavy armor? The answer lies in the kill zone. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. They thought the valley was empty. Quiet fields, cut with a narrow asphalt road, gave the illusion of nothing but countryside. Yet every one of their movements had been measured and logged for weeks. 87 North Korean tanks, followed by BTR carriers and BMP fighting vehicles, rolled forward in a line that stretched so far across Donbas, it looked like a migrating herd of machines. The crews sat with their hatches closed, confident that Ukrainian defenses had fractured and fallen back. Diesel engines growled across the valley floor, exhaust spilling into the icy night as the column pressed ahead without pause. What none of them knew was that overhead, eyes never blinked. Satellites stitched together infrared outlines day after day, mapping the armored stream. Files of imagery crossed from secure French and British servers into Ukrainian tactical networks. Drones flew invisible arcs over the same roads, cataloging each tire mark and fuel stop. Every halt, every attempt to camouflage a parked tank beneath tree lines was captured, logged, and stored inside Kyiv's growing web of intelligence. To the crews inside the steel hulls, Donbas was an open road. To the analysts behind their screens, it was a vast chessboard where each piece had already been tracked to its next square. Weeks before the column entered, Ukrainian engineers had crawled through the soil, concealing hundreds of mines in a layered design. They didn't just sprinkle explosives at random. The traps were arranged like invisible corridors, funneling armor toward narrow gaps and false exits. Hidden bulldozers dug trenches in the dark, filled them, and smoothed the ground as if untouched. Entire ridgelines carried charges buried deep beneath tractor furrows. If a tank pushed down one lane, the ground itself was wired to erupt. If another tried to veer east to skirt the obstacle, its road would collapse into a pit. The entire valley floor was a field of choices, each one leading into a more violent dead end. The moment of contact came at 3:21 in the morning. A lead tank drove squarely over a pressure plate set 3 weeks earlier. The steel hull climbed into the air before collapsing in smoke and fire. Within seconds, the tank behind slammed its brakes too late, colliding headfirst into the burning wreck. More detonations echoed left and right as the soil erupted. Mines set off sympathetic blasts across concealed chains, scattering dirt and steel like shrapnel across vehicles hundreds of feet away. In less than 60 seconds, the long snake of armor had fractured in shock. Engines whined as drivers tried to back away. Tracks spun in mud, grinding but going nowhere. All of it streamed in real time into Ukraine's fire control grid. Soldiers miles away didn't just guess at what was happening. They saw digital markers of every tracked vehicle, every stalled transporter, glowing on their monitors. Each drone camera, each radar pulse, poured its feed into one map. A valley that appeared silent to tank crews was alive in another dimension, where commanders could place pins and order fires with exact timing. One Ukrainian officer later joked that the valley looked less like combat and more like a video game screen where every enemy pixel blinked bright red. A Russian Orlan 10 spotted overhead tried to pierce this picture, transmitting live coordinates back to its operators. But anti-drone units jammed it within seconds, wrestled control of the feed, and looped false images back to its own controllers. Russian spotters, instead of seeing targets, received scrambled loops of empty roads. Underneath them, their entire armored formation stood blind, boxed in, and unaware of how deeply the trap had already clicked shut. The initial blasts didn't just kill the lead tanks, they sealed the exits on both sides, pinning heavy armor in a steel bottleneck. Instead of advancing toward Ukrainian lines, the column found itself locked in place, surrounded by hidden corridors of explosives. And as smoke drifted in the cold night air, the real storm, precision fire drawn from every domain, began to position itself for the strike. Tanks sat immobilized at the center of the valley, smoke drifting from twisted metal, while crews inside the surviving vehicles tried to keep moving. Tracks tore the soil as they reversed and surged forward, searching desperately for lanes that weren't mined or blocked by wreckage. Drivers pushed into mud where the asphalt had broken away, only to sink and throw their machines sideways. Officers shouted over radios, trying to clear a path, but words drowned under engine roars and chaotic bursts of small arms fire. For a moment, it looked like the column might still break through if sheer weight could force the steel mass forward. That illusion shattered as precision fire locked in. Long-range artillery batteries, cued by digital coordinates fed directly from drones, began pounding the valley's choke points. HIMARS rockets arced overhead before slamming into stalled armor, breaking turrets free from their hulls. Caesar howitzers, firing from concealed positions, struck the tail of the column and trapped the rear vehicles in burning wreckages, closing every escape. Above them, dozens of FPV drones, armed with small but deadly payloads, darted straight into targets left exposed, detonating inside open hatches or against engine grills. The survivors, now boxed into narrow lanes guided by minefields, found themselves funneled directly into the killing grid. The skies carried more than guns. Rafale fighters flew circuits above the battlefield, but did not release bombs. Instead, they operated as signal predators, sweeping for radar, jamming enemy transmissions, and relaying live thermal imagery to Ukrainian command posts. Their presence darkened entire segments of Russian communications, isolating the trapped tanks even further. Crews inside armored hulls struggled to transmit positions and call for air support, only to hear static. Commanders outside the valley received incomplete fragments of data, never a full picture, leaving reinforcements blind to what kind of punishment their column actually faced. On the ground, smaller stories unfolded with ruthless clarity. One BMP fought to escape the choke point, veering toward the soft ground at the valley edge. It managed a few dozen meters before its tracks slipped, struggling to haul its heavy body forward. As it spun mud, a javelin missile cut through the night sky in a white streak. The explosion hit squarely at the turret, blowing the vehicle apart and lighting up the valley in a glow that reflected off smoke plumes. There was no pause. Gunners shifted to the next target, methodically dismantling one survivor at a time. Even within the chaos, discipline held. Ukrainian medics moved across the field under covering fire, documenting their treatment of wounded North Korean crewmen pulled from burning machines. Combat continued around them as artillery cracked and drones plummeted from above. But field teams carried stretchers, applying tourniquets, and quickly evacuating prisoners. The contrast stood out starkly, a machine line being slaughtered while enemy soldiers who no longer posed a threat received medical care amidst the destruction. By 4:10 a.m., the effects became undeniable. Bridges spanning small tributaries into the valley had been bombed and collapsed, cutting reinforcement routes. Trucks carrying ammunition and diesel erupted as secondary blasts, scattering fuel flames across bodies of stalled tanks. Narrow choke points, once thought to be passageways, ended as burning funnels, where mangled metal marked each attempted push. In less than 50 minutes, nearly 60% of the column had disintegrated into wreckage. Vehicles that took decades of allocation and trade to acquire were reduced to blackened shells, lining the valley floor in a single night. Strength here didn't come from Ukraine fielding more armored divisions. It came from patience, from waiting weeks to build the right conditions, and from using intelligence to make every move count. Timing made mines more destructive than missiles. Coordination made rockets more decisive than tanks. So ask yourself, has modern war shifted forever? Are precision ambushes, built on data and restraint, the real spearhead of the future? And if so, what countermeasures will adversaries have to invent just to survive? Numbers can deceive, but discipline and preparation leave no room for illusion. In combat, those two never lie.